Hey there. Tonight, we're going back, way back, to 1472 BCE. You are standing in the shadows of the greatest temple ever built. But here's the thing nobody tells you in history class. You're not supposed to be here. You're a woman, and in 3 months, you'll be wearing the false beard of a pharaoh, holding the crook and flail, commanding armies that will make emperors tremble. Your name will be erased. Your statues will be smashed. Your temples will be claimed by others. For 3,000 years, the world will forget you existed. But tonight, you're about to live it all. Welcome, everyone. If you're new here, this is where history meets sleep, where we dive into the stories they never taught you in school. Tonight's journey is long, brutal, and absolutely true in spirit. So grab your pillow, dim the lights, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Tonight, you won't just learn about ancient Egypt, you'll live it. You'll feel the Nile mud between your toes, taste the copper tang of battle, and understand what it truly meant to conquer when the world said you couldn't. So, dim the lights, and let's begin. You are 7 years old, and your hands are shaking as you hold the bronze mirror. Your father, Thutmose I, Pharaoh of Upper and Lower Egypt, has just told you something that will change everything. Your mother was not his great royal wife. You are not first in line. You are not even second. The palace corridors smell of frankincense and lily oil, but underneath, there's always the scent of the Nile, muddy, ancient, alive. You've learned to walk these halls without making sound, pressing your small feet against the painted limestone floors. The servants whisper when you pass. Hatshepsut, they say, the foremost of noble ladies. But their eyes say something else. Bastard daughter. Your half-brother Thutmose is weak. Everyone knows it. He coughs blood into linen cloths and can barely lift a training sword. The priests make sacrifices daily for his health, but you've seen how they look at him, like he's already a mummy waiting to be wrapped. Your father calls you to the throne room after the morning rituals. The great hall is empty except for the two of you and the painted gods watching from every wall. Horus, Isis, Amun-Ra with his sun disk blazing gold leaf. You have your mother's eyes, he says, and my mind. You don't understand yet, but you will. You are 9 years old when you first see someone die by royal command. The vizier's son was caught stealing grain from the temple warehouses, grain meant for the workers building your father's tomb. The punishment is simple, 50 lashes in the palace courtyard. You watch from the columned walkway above. Your father insisted. A pharaoh must understand the weight of justice, he said. Watch without looking away. The young man is tied to a wooden post. He's maybe 17, his back already scarred from previous beatings. The Magi guard raises the leather whip, thick, studded with small bronze weights. The first strike tears skin. The sound is wet, horrible. The young man screams. You don't look away. By the 20th strike, he's stopped screaming. By the 30th, he's unconscious. By the 40th, you can see white bone beneath the shredded flesh. They stop at 50 because those are the orders, but he dies that night anyway. Your half-brother Thutmose vomited after the first 5 lashes and ran crying to his mother. The whole court heard about it. Your father's disappointment was a physical thing. You could feel it radiating from the throne room for days. You didn't vomit. You didn't cry. You stood and watched until it was finished, then went to the temple and made offerings to Maat, goddess of justice and truth. That night, you dream of wielding the whip yourself. You are 11 when your father takes you on your first military campaign. Not to fight, you're still a child and female besides, but to observe, to learn. The target is a Nubian tribe that's refused tribute for 3 consecutive seasons. The march south takes 20 days. You ride in a carrying chair at first, but after the first week, you convince the captain of your guard to let you walk with the soldiers. Your feet blister. Your legs ache. The other commanders look at your father like he's lost his mind, bringing a girl child into a war zone. The Nubian village sits near the third cataract, a cluster of mud brick houses and animal pens surrounded by acacia trees. Your father offers them one final chance to surrender. Their chief, a tall man with ritual scars across his cheeks, spits at the messenger's feet. The attack begins at dawn. You watch from a hill as 500 Egyptian soldiers sweep through the village like a flood. The Nubians fight with spears and clubs, brave but hopelessly outmatched against bronze swords and organized infantry. It's over in less than an hour. The survivors, mostly women and children, are bound in rope lines. They'll be marched back to Egypt as slaves. The men who resisted are beheaded on the spot. Their heads are piled in the village center as a warning. You count them. 43. That night, around the military camp's fire, you ask your father why they didn't surrender. He looks at you for a long moment. Would you? He asks. You think about it honestly. No, you say. He smiles, the first real smile you've ever seen from him. Good. You are 12 when they tell you that you'll marry your half-brother, Thutmose II, the weak one, the one who still coughs blood and can barely complete the morning rituals without his servant's help. Your father is dying. Everyone knows it, though no one speaks it aloud. The lung sickness that's been plaguing him for months has gotten worse. He can no longer lead the army, can no longer even walk the length of the throne room without stopping to rest. The marriage is political necessity. Thutmose's claim to the throne is stronger by birth order, but weak by everything else. Your bloodline is purer. Your mother was a full Egyptian noble, while his mother was a minor wife of foreign extraction. By marrying you, he legitimizes his rule. By marrying him, you get to stay in the palace, close to power. The wedding ceremony is elaborate, expensive, and utterly meaningless to you. You wear the vulture crown for the first time, the symbol of Mut, mother goddess. It weighs almost as much as you do. Your husband can barely stand through the ceremony. He's 14 and looks like a sick old man. When the priests pronounce you man and wife, king and great royal wife, you don't feel married. You feel like a game piece being moved across the Senate board. That night, in the marriage chamber, Thutmose falls asleep before anything can happen. You lie awake, staring at the painted ceiling, counting the stars visible through the window. You're 12 years old and already a queen, but you're not a pharaoh. Not yet. You are 13 when your father dies. The lung sickness finally wins. He drowns in his own blood on a hot summer night, surrounded by priests chanting prayers to Osiris. You're not allowed in the death chamber. Women aren't, even queens. But you stand outside the door for 6 hours, listening to his breathing get worse and worse, until finally, silence. The wailing starts immediately. Professional mourners, hired for every royal death, fill the palace with their practiced grief. They tear their clothes, throw dust on their heads, shriek loud enough to wake the gods. It's theatre, all of it. But beneath the performance, you sense genuine fear from the court. Your husband is now Thutmose II, pharaoh of Upper and Lower Egypt, lord of the 2 lands. And everyone knows he's not strong enough for the crown. The funeral preparations take 70 days. Your father's body is removed, washed, embalmed. The internal organs are placed in canopic jars: stomach, intestines, lungs, liver. The brain is pulled out through the nose with bronze hooks and discarded. Egyptians don't think the brain does anything important. You watch the embalmers work. They're surprised when you enter the purification tent, but no one stops a queen. You study every step of the process. The incision in the left side, the natron salt that desiccates the flesh, The linen wrappings, hundreds of yards of it. The amulets placed between layers. Scarabs, jed pillars, eyes of Horus. When they place your father's mummy in the nested coffins and seal the outermost one, you touch the gold face that looks nothing like the man you knew. "I'll finish what you started," you whisper. No one hears you, but you mean it. Character appearance. You wear the white mourning dress of royal women, plain linen with no ornamentation except a single tear at the chest symbolizing grief. Your hair is loose, uncombed, deliberately disheveled according to mourning custom. Your face is unpainted, showing the dark circles under your eyes from days without sleep. Your hands are stained with the blue-black dye used in funerary rites. Despite the appearance of grief, your eyes are clear, calculating, already looking toward what comes next. You are 14 when you realize your husband will never give you a daughter who could rule, or a son. He tries, occasionally, when his health permits and the court physicians press him about producing heirs. But nothing happens. This is when you start planning. Egypt is stable for now, but stability is an illusion in an empire this size. The Mitanni kingdom to the northeast is growing stronger. The Kushites in Nubia are restless. Syrian city-states are forming alliances. Without a strong pharaoh, the whole thing could collapse within a generation. You begin studying warfare seriously. Not the ceremonial aspects your husband performs, the ritual smiting of enemies, the symbolic chariot rides, but real military strategy. You read campaign reports from your father's campaigns. You question generals who visited the palace. You memorize troop formations, supply line logistics, siege tactics. The court thinks you're eccentric. A queen interested in war? Unnatural. They smile and nod and ignore you, which is exactly what you want. Your husband's health deteriorates through the year. He develops a persistent fever. The physicians bleed him regularly, apply poultices of honey and herbs, prescribe rest and prayer. Nothing helps. By your 15th birthday, he's barely conscious most days. The real power in the kingdom shifts to the priesthood of Amun and the vizier. They start making decisions without consulting the throne. Tax rates, judicial appointments, trade agreements. Your husband is pharaoh in name only. You attend every administrative meeting you can, sitting silent in the corner, listening, learning, waiting. One night, your husband's chamberlain finds you in the archives, reading military dispatches by lamplight. "My queen," he says carefully, "these are matters for the pharaoh and his advisors." You look up at him. You're 15 years old, and you've already mastered the royal stare, the one that reminds people they're addressing a god. "I am the pharaoh's wife," you say quietly. "His interests are mine." The chamberlain bows and leaves. You go back to your reading. You're 16 when your husband dies. The fever finally consumes him on a spring morning. He's 19 years old and has been pharaoh for barely 4 years. This is the crisis you've been preparing for. Thutmose II has a son. Thutmose III, born to a minor palace wife named Isis. The boy is 3 years old. Technically, he's next in line for the throne. Technically, you should step aside and let the priests and generals rule as regents until he comes of age. You have other plans. The morning your husband's death is announced, you're already in motion. You meet with the high priest of Amun before anyone else can. You remind him that you are daughter of Thutmose I, great royal wife of Thutmose II, and the most senior member of the royal bloodline still living. You remind him that Egypt needs stability, not a child pharaoh with squabbling regents. You offer him a deal. Support your co-regency with the boy, and you'll triple the temple's annual endowment. You'll build a new sanctuary for Amun-Ra. You'll restore all the shrines your father let fall into disrepair. The priest is old, but he's not stupid. He knows what you're really offering. Your compliance in exchange for his support. A partnership between throne and temple, the two greatest powers in Egypt. He agrees. Within a week, you're crowned as co-regent and pharaoh alongside Thutmose III. The ceremony is carefully orchestrated. You wear the false beard, the uraeus cobra on your brow, the double crown. You hold the crook and flail. The priests proclaim you as chosen by Amun-Ra himself. You're 16 years old, and you've just become one of the most powerful people in the world. The court is in shock. The generals are furious. The nobles whisper treason. You don't care. You have the priesthood, which means you have divine legitimacy. And you have plans, so many plans, that have been waiting for this moment. Egypt is about to remember what it means to have a pharaoh who can actually rule. You are 17 when you lead your first campaign, not as an observer this time, as pharaoh and commander. The Cushites in Nubia have interpreted your sex as weakness. They've stopped sending tribute. They've raided border settlements. They've killed Egyptian soldiers and taken their weapons as trophies. This cannot stand. You assemble an army, 3,000 soldiers, the largest military force Egypt has deployed in years. The generals are skeptical. They've never served under a female commander. They expect you to leave the actual fighting to them while you watch from a safe distance. The march south takes 3 weeks. You ride at the front of the column, not in a carrying chair, but on a chariot beside your military commanders. You wear light armor, leather and bronze scales, and carry a composite bow. You've been practicing with it for years. The Cushite forces meet you at a river crossing near the fortress of Buhen. They've chosen good ground, high banks, narrow approach, difficult terrain for chariots. They have about 1,500 warriors, well-armed, confident. Your generals want to siege them out, wait for reinforcements, avoid a direct confrontation. You reject this immediately. We didn't march 3 weeks to sit and wait, you say. We attack at dawn. You divide your force into 3 units. Infantry to fix their attention at the crossing, archers to provide covering fire, and a flanking force, your personal guard plus 200 chariots, to circle upstream, ford the river at a shallow point, and hit them from the side. You lead the flanking force yourself. The battle is chaos. Arrows whistle overhead. Men scream. Horses scream. The Cushite warriors fight with desperate courage, but they're outflanked, outnumbered, and facing professional soldiers who drill daily. You personally kill 3 men. The first with an arrow at 30 paces. The second with a bronze khopesh sword as your chariot crashes through their line. The third with a spear thrust when he tries to pull you from your chariot. The battle lasts less than 2 hours. The Cushite force is destroyed. You take 200 prisoners and leave the rest for the vultures. That night, your generals look at you differently. You're not a girl playing pharaoh anymore. You're a warrior who's proven yourself in blood. You are 18 when you begin the greatest building program Egypt has seen in generations. But building requires money, and money requires control of trade routes. You turn your attention north to the land of Punt, a mysterious region somewhere on the Red Sea coast, source of myrrh, frankincense, ebony, and exotic animals. No pharaoh has successfully traded with Punt in over 100 years. You decide to change that. You commission 5 ships, massive ocean-going vessels, the largest Egypt has ever built. 30 oars per side, square sails, reinforced hulls. Each ship carries 30 tons of cargo, copper tools, jewelry, weapons, linen, beer, grain. The expedition takes 2 years to prepare. You oversee every detail personally. The ships must be built on the Nile, then dismantled, carried overland to the Red Sea, and reassembled. It's an engineering challenge that makes your advisors say, it's impossible. You ignore them. When the ships finally launch, you stand on the dock and watch them disappear south along the coast. The expedition commander is a trusted general named Nehesi. You've given him clear instructions. Establish trade relations, acquire as much myrrh and frankincense as possible, and return with proof that Egypt's power extends beyond the Nile Valley. 10 months later, the ships return. They're loaded with treasures. Myrrh trees still in their root balls, frankincense resin by the ton, ebony and ivory, live baboons, exotic birds, even a giraffe. The Puntite queen herself sent gifts, gold rings, leopard skins, cosmetics. The economic impact is immediate. You control the myrrh and frankincense trade now, which means you control temple income across Egypt. Every priest who wants incense for rituals has to buy it from royal warehouses. Your treasury swells. More importantly, you've proven something. Egypt, under your rule, isn't in decline. It's expanding, reaching further than it has in generations. The propaganda value is incalculable. You are 19 when you begin building Jessa Jesseru, your mortuary temple. The name means Holy of Holies, and it will be the most ambitious architectural project in Egyptian history. You choose a site at Deir el-Bahri, a natural amphitheatre in the Theban cliffs, across the river from Karnak. The location is perfect, dramatic, isolated, defensible, and sacred. You stand there for hours, envisioning what it will become. 3 terrace levels cut into the cliff face, colonnaded walkways, ramps connecting each tier, halls carved directly into the living rock. Hundreds of painted reliefs showing your divine birth, your military victories, your trading expeditions. Your architect is named Senenmut. He's brilliant, ambitious, and probably in love with you, though nothing can ever come of that. A pharaoh doesn't have lovers. A pharaoh has political necessities. The project will take 15 years and require thousands of workers. You establish a permanent labor camp nearby. Not slaves, but paid workers rotating in shifts. You visit the site regularly, sometimes climbing the scaffolding yourself to inspect the stonework, ignoring the horrified protests of your guards. You have the walls covered with propaganda, the story of your divine conception, the god Amun-Ra taking the form of your father, Thutmose I, to impregnate your mother, your coronation by the gods themselves, your trading expedition to Punt, depicted in elaborate detail, the ships, the exotic goods, the Puntite queen with her unusual appearance. The message is clear. You're not just pharaoh by political maneuvering. You were chosen by the gods before your birth. Your right to rule is absolute and divine. The nobles who questioned your legitimacy can argue with human monarchs, but they can't argue with painted proof of divine selection, covering 100 feet of temple wall. You are 20 when you decide to deal with the priesthood of Amun. They supported your rise to power, yes, but they're becoming too powerful, too independent. The high priest now controls a third of Egypt's arable land through temple endowments. That's unacceptable. You can't fight them directly. They control religious legitimacy, which means they control public opinion. But you can outmaneuver them. You establish new temples to other gods, Hathor, Thoth, Ptah. Each one receives generous endowments, creating alternative power centers that compete with Amun's priesthood for influence and resources. You also begin inserting your own people into the temple hierarchy. The second prophet of Amun suddenly retires, and your nominee, a priest who's been loyal to you since your coronation, takes his place. The third prophet dies in a boating accident, genuinely accidental, though conspiracy theories spread, and again, your candidate fills the vacancy. Within 3 years, you effectively control the temple of Amun from within, while appearing to support it from without. The current high priest, Hapu Seneb, is old and sick. When he dies, your succession plan will activate. But he's stubborn. He keeps living, year after year, despite his age and declining health. You have patience. Pharaohs think in decades, not days. Meanwhile, you make a show of piety that would shame a monk. You commission new shrines. You personally lead religious festivals. You make offerings so generous that even the skeptical priests have to acknowledge your devotion. The key to power, you've learned, isn't force. It's making others believe their interests align with yours. Make the priesthood wealthy and they'll support you. Make them dependent on your generosity and they'll fear losing you. It's manipulation, yes, but it's also survival. You are 21 when the Syrian city-states decide to test you. 7 cities in the Levant, Kadesh, Megiddo, Kadesh, and others, form an alliance and stop sending tribute. They expect Egypt to negotiate, to accept reduced payments, to show weakness. They've miscalculated badly. You assemble the largest army Egypt has fielded in a generation. 6,000 infantry, 800 chariots, 2,000 auxiliary troops from Nubian allies. The logistics alone are staggering. Supplying that many soldiers on a campaign north through the desert requires planning down to the last grain sack. Your generals expect a slow campaign of sieges. Syrian cities have strong walls, good defenses, and experienced defenders. A siege of Megiddo alone could take months. You have a different approach. Your army marches north at forced pace, covering 20 miles per day, faster than anyone thought possible. You reach the first rebellious city, Yanoam, before they've even finished preparing their defenses. You don't bother with a siege. You send a message. Surrender immediately and pay triple tribute for 3 years, or face complete destruction. They laugh at the demand. A woman pharaoh threatening them? Absurd. You order the attack at dawn. Your forces overwhelm their walls in 6 hours. Every adult male in the city is executed. The women and children are enslaved. The city itself is burned to the foundation stones. You leave it as a smoking ruin and march to the next city. Word spreads faster than your army moves. By the time you reach Megiddo, their gates are open and their officials are prostrate in the dirt, offering tribute and begging for mercy. You accept. You're not actually interested in genocide. You're interested in making a point. Syria is part of Egypt's empire, and that empire has a pharaoh who will enforce her will with absolute ruthlessness if necessary. The campaign lasts 4 months. All 7 cities submit. Tribute flows into Egypt's treasury. Your generals return home with stories of your strategic brilliance and merciless efficiency. Your reputation as a warrior pharaoh is now established beyond any doubt. You are 22 when you realize your co-regent, the boy king Thutmose III, is becoming a problem. He's 9 years old now, and he's starting to understand that co-regent means he shares power with you. Or rather, he has the title while you have the actual authority. He's also starting to ask dangerous questions. "Why do you wear the false beard?" he asks during a private dinner. "You're not a man." You look at him calmly. He's a small child, thin and serious, with his father's weak constitution, but a sharp mind. "Pharaohs wear the false beard," you say. "I am Pharaoh, therefore I wear it." "But I'm Pharaoh too," he points out. "Yes," you agree. "We are both Pharaoh. Egypt is fortunate to have 2 divine rulers." He's not stupid. He sees through the deflection. But he's also 9, and you're the only parent figure he's known since his father died. He wants your approval, even as he resents your power. You begin a delicate balancing act. You include him in some ceremonies, let him wear the crown during specific festivals, allow him to issue proclamations that you've written in his name. You give him the appearance of authority while maintaining absolute control over actual policy. You also start grooming him for military command, not because you want him to have power, but because keeping him busy and feeling useful prevents resentment from festering. You send him on small campaigns to Nubia with experienced generals. You let him claim credit from minor victories. The court watches this dynamic with fascination. Some bet on when he'll rebel. Others assume you'll have him quietly murdered. They don't understand the game you're playing. You're not trying to eliminate him. You're trying to make him dependent on you, to make him see you as essential to his own power rather than an obstacle to it. It's working, for now. You are 23 when a delegation arrives from the Mitanni kingdom. They bring gifts, horses, gold, lapis lazuli, and a marriage proposal. The Mitanni king wants to marry you. Politically, it makes sense. It would create a formal alliance between the two greatest powers in the Near East. Economically, it would secure trade routes and end border conflicts. Diplomatically, it would be celebrated as a triumph of peace over war. You reject the proposal immediately. Your court is shocked. The high priest argues that such an alliance would benefit Egypt enormously. The vizier points out the economic advantages. Even your military commanders suggest that peace with Mitanni would free up resources for campaigns elsewhere. You dismiss them all. Egypt does not give away its pharaohs, you say. We take tribute. We do not become tribute. The Mitanni ambassadors try to negotiate. They offer more gifts, better terms, assurances of your autonomy. You let them talk themselves hoarse, then give your final answer. Tell your king that if he wants an alliance with Egypt, he may send annual tribute, submit his army for inspection, and acknowledge the superiority of Amun-Ra over all foreign gods. If these terms are unacceptable, he may go home and count himself fortunate that I don't march north to discuss the matter in person. The ambassadors leave in disgust. Your court expects war. The Mitanni have never been so publicly insulted. But you understand something they don't. The Mitanni king isn't strong enough to fight Egypt right now. He's dealing with internal rebellions and threats from the Hittites to his north. The marriage proposal was a desperate attempt to secure his southern border. By rejecting him, you've exposed his weakness. Within a year, reports confirm that Mitanni is dealing with revolts from vassal states who now see them as vulnerable. You didn't gain an ally, but you prevented a rival from gaining legitimacy through association with Egypt. Sometimes refusing power is itself an exercise of power. You are 24 when construction begins on your obelisks. Not one, but two, the tallest obelisks ever erected in Egypt. Each one is a single piece of red granite from the Aswan quarries, 90 feet tall, weighing over 300 tons. The engineering challenge is staggering. Your engineers tell you it's impossible. You tell them to solve the problem or find new couriers. It takes 3 years just to quarry and transport them. Workers cut the granite directly from the quarry face using copper tools and dolerite pounders. They create a massive wooden sled to drag each obelisk to the Nile, then build special barges reinforced to carry the weight. The transport is a nightmare. The barge carrying the first obelisk nearly sinks twice. The second obelisk breaks free from its restraints during a storm and almost crashes through the barge's deck. Each journey from Aswan to Thebes takes 4 months. Erecting them at Karnak Temple requires building earthen ramps, complex pulley systems, and a level of precision that seems beyond human capability. One miscalculation and 300 tons of granite comes crashing down, killing everyone nearby. You oversee the entire process personally. When the chief engineer has a nervous breakdown from the stress, you find a replacement within a day. When workers die, and dozens do, You order their families compensated and immediately recruit more. The day the obelisks are finally raised is a national celebration. The whole country turns out to watch. The obelisks are covered in electrum, a gold-silver alloy that catches the sun and can be seen for miles. The hieroglyphs carved into all four sides tell of your greatness, your divine selection, your military victories. They're the tallest structures in Egypt except for the pyramids. They'll stand for 3,000 years, proclaiming your name when everything else about you has been erased. That's the point. You are 25 when the crop failure hits. The Nile's annual flood is unusually low. The inundation that should cover the fields and deposit fresh silt only reaches half its normal height. Farmers plant what they can, but the harvest is terrible, maybe 40% of a normal year. This is the test that breaks pharaohs. Food shortage means unrest, which means rebellion, which means the end of dynasties. You act immediately and ruthlessly. First, you raid the temple granaries. Every temple in Egypt is required to open its stores and sell grain at controlled prices. The priests scream about sacrilege. You remind them that a starving population won't make offerings to their gods. They comply. Second, you halt all non-essential construction projects and redirect those workers to irrigation improvement. Canals are dug and deepened. Reservoirs are expanded. Entire villages are relocated to optimize water distribution. Third, you implement strict rationing. Every family receives a daily grain allowance based on size. Hoarding is punishable by death. You make an example of 3 wealthy merchants caught hiding grain. They're executed publicly, and their entire grain stores are distributed to the poor. Fourth, you personally tour the hardest-hit provinces. Not in royal splendor, but in simple traveling dress. You speak with farmers, inspect fields, listen to their problems. You're seen, which matters. Pharaohs who hide in their palaces during crisis get overthrown. The famine lasts 2 years. People are hungry, but they don't starve en masse. The death toll is perhaps 10,000. Terrible, but nothing like the hundreds of thousands who would have died without intervention. More importantly, people remember that their pharaoh didn't abandon them. The propaganda value is immense. You're not just a conqueror or builder. You're a protector who ensured survival during crisis. Your political position is now unassailable. You are 26 when you begin systematically rewriting history. Your scribes are ordered to create new versions of temple records, diplomatic archives, and royal genealogies. The official story becomes this. You were always meant to rule. The god Amun-Ra selected you before birth, appearing to your mother in divine form. Your father, Thutmose I, recognized your destiny and named you his successor. Your coronation was the fulfillment of divine prophecy, not political maneuvering. Your husband, Thutmose II, barely mentioned. A weak pharaoh who ruled briefly and accomplished little. His son, Thutmose III, your co-regent, yes, but clearly the junior partner, governing only at your pleasure. Every temple you build includes detailed reliefs showing your divine legitimacy. The story of Amun-Ra's conception of you is carved in stone across hundreds of square meters at Djeser-Djeseru. Paintings show you receiving the crown directly from the gods themselves. Statues portray you with the masculine features and strong physique of a male pharaoh. The false beard becomes permanent in all representations. Some statues even show you with a male body. Flat chest, broad shoulders, narrow hips. You're not depicted as a woman who became pharaoh. You're depicted as pharaoh who happens to have been born female. A divine exception to normal rules. Your name in cartouches changes subtly. Instead of feminine endings, you use masculine forms. You're not Hatshepsut, she who is foremost of noble ladies. You're Hatshepsut, His Majesty, Lord of the Two Lands. The propaganda campaign is comprehensive, expensive, and effective. Within a decade, younger priests who weren't there for your actual coronation believe the mythologized version. You've successfully rewritten your own origin story. Truth is what's carved in stone. Everything else is just memory, and memory fades. You are 27 when you receive word that Thutmose III has begun gathering his own supporters. He's 14 now, almost old enough to rule independently. His military commanders from the Nubian campaigns are forming a faction. They meet privately. They discuss what Egypt would look like under a sole male pharaoh. This is the moment you've been preparing for. You don't confront Thutmose directly. That would force the conflict into the open, create a crisis that could tear the country apart. Instead, you neutralize his support base piece by piece. The general leading his faction receives a prestigious but distant posting, governor of Nubia, a position of great honor that also removes him from Thebes for years at a time. Another supporter becomes high priest of Ptah in Memphis, again powerful, prestigious, and far from the center of power. You promote Thutmose himself, giving him more military campaigns, more ceremonies, more visible responsibilities. You let him think he's gaining power while ensuring his actual authority remains limited. Most importantly, you bind him with gold. Every successful campaign he leads results in massive rewards. Land grants, gifts, honors. You make him wealthy and comfortable. You make his supporters wealthy and comfortable. You give them so much that they begin to fear losing it if the political situation changes. It's the oldest trick in power politics. Give people a stake in the current system and they'll defend it even against their own interests. Within a year, Thutmose III's incipient rebellion fizzles without ever becoming overt. His supporters are scattered across Egypt in positions too good to abandon. He himself is too honored and rewarded to justify complaint. You've won without ever acknowledging there was a fight. You're 28 when your closest advisor, Senenmut, dies. The official story is illness. The unofficial story, the one whispered in palace corridors, is that he knew too much and became too ambitious. Senenmut was brilliant. He designed Djeser. He managed your building projects, your trade expeditions, your economic policies. He was also probably in love with you and definitely aware of every political secret you'd accumulated in 14 years of rule. His death is convenient, suspiciously convenient. You attend his funeral with appropriate solemnity. You give a speech praising his service to Egypt and to the gods. You grant him burial in a tomb near your own, a tremendous honor. You make sure his family is provided for, and you breathe easier knowing that certain secrets died with him. The court watches this carefully. If you murdered Senenmut, and no one can prove it either way, it sends a message. No one is indispensable. Loyalty is rewarded, but those who become liabilities are removed. You appoint 3 people to divide his former responsibilities. You'll never again let one person accumulate that much knowledge about your operations. Single points of failure are vulnerabilities you can't afford. That night, alone in your private chambers, you permit yourself a moment of grief. Senenmut was brilliant and useful, and possibly the closest thing you had to a friend. But friendship is a luxury pharaohs can't afford. You cry for perhaps 10 minutes. Then you wash your face, put on your royal mask, and return to work. Egypt doesn't run itself. You are 29 when you commission your sarcophagus. Not the outer ones, those will be covered in gold and lapis lazuli, meant to impress. The inner one, the one your actual mummy will rest in. You order it carved from a single piece of red quartzite, a stone so hard it takes years to shape. The lid will show you as you want to be remembered. A male pharaoh with the false beard, the Nemi's headcloth, arms crossed holding the crook and flail. Perfect, eternal, divine. The hieroglyphs covering every surface tell your story. Your divine conception, your coronation, your military victories, your building projects. Thousands of words carved into stone, ensuring the gods know exactly who you are when you arrive in the afterlife. You're only 29. You could live another 30 years. But pharaohs prepare for death from the moment they're crowned. Death is just another state function that requires proper planning. You visit the Valley of the Kings, where your tomb is being carved. It's located near your father's, as is proper. The corridors descend deep into the bedrock, decorated with scenes from the Book of the Dead, spells to guide your journey to the afterlife. Your mummy will be prepared with extreme care. Your organs will be preserved in canopic jars. Your body will be wrapped in the finest linen, with amulets between each layer. Your tomb will be filled with everything you need in the afterlife: furniture, jewelry, food, wine, servants represented by Ushapti figures. You've thought of everything except one detail. What happens to Egypt after you're gone? Thutmose III will be sole pharaoh. He's young enough, capable enough, probably competent enough. But will he remember you? Will he honor your legacy? You are 30 when you launch your final military campaign. The Canaanite cities along the coast have formed a new alliance, thinking 14 years is long enough to test whether Egypt's female pharaoh is still capable of projecting power. They're about to learn you haven't softened with age. You assemble 4,000 troops and march north along the coast road. This is a demonstration campaign. You're not actually worried about these cities conquering Egypt. You're making sure everyone remembers what happens when tribute stops. The campaign is brutal efficiency. You reach the first city, give them 1 day to surrender, and when they refuse, you storm the walls. Your troops are professional, experienced, and completely ruthless. The city falls in 8 hours. You order every male over the age of 15 executed. The women, children, and younger boys are enslaved. The city's wealth is loaded into carts and sent back to Egypt. The city itself is burned. You do this to 3 more cities. By the time you reach the 5th, their gates are open, and officials are throwing themselves at your feet, begging for mercy. You grant it. You're not actually trying to depopulate the region. You're making an example. You accept their surrender, triple their tribute, take hostages from their leading families, and move on. The entire campaign takes 3 months. You return to Thebes with carts full of plunder, hundreds of slaves, and unquestioned proof that at 30 years old, you're still the most dangerous person in the Near East. Your generals carry you on their shields into the city. The crowds line the streets. You've given them a victory parade, loot to distribute, slaves to sell. You've proven you're not some peaceful administrator, but a warrior pharaoh in the tradition of your father. Thutmose III, now 17, rides in the parade behind you. He's old enough to see exactly how military glory is manufactured and political capital is earned. He's learning. You just hope he's learning the right lessons. You are 31 when you realize you're sick. It starts small: unusual fatigue, occasional fevers, joint pain that you attribute to age and old battle injuries. But it gets worse. Some mornings you can barely get out of bed. The royal physicians apply their remedies: honey, herbs, prayers, bloodletting. But nothing helps. You can't let anyone know. Pharaohs don't get sick. Pharaohs are divine, eternal, perfect. If the court realizes you're weakening, the vultures will circle. Thutmose III will sense opportunity. The priesthood will start planning succession. Your enemies will mobilize. So you hide it. You schedule public appearances for the afternoon, when you're strongest. You keep morning audiences brief. You train yourself to show no pain, no weakness, no sign of mortality. The false beard becomes a mask behind which you can grimace without being seen. Your inner circle knows something is wrong, but you deny it absolutely. I'm fine, just tired from the campaign. A pharaoh's work is never finished. Privately, you begin to worry. You're only 31. Your father died at 45. His father at 52. Tutmo's bloodline isn't known for longevity. You accelerate your building projects. Djeser must be finished. Your obelisks must be completed. Your legacy must be carved so deeply into stone that it can't be erased. You work longer hours despite the pain. You push yourself harder. You refuse to rest because rest looks like weakness, and weakness is death in the political arena. The irony is not lost on you. You've spent 16 years fighting for power, and now your own body is rebelling against you. But you can't stop. Stopping is surrender, and you've never surrendered to anything in your life.
You are 32 when you make a crucial decision. You begin training your daughter Neferure as your successor. She's 15, intelligent, capable, and most importantly, female. If you can establish the precedent of female rule strongly enough, she could continue what you've built. You give her responsibilities gradually. Administrative oversight of temple estates, review of trade agreements, attendance at judicial proceedings. You're teaching her everything your father taught you. The court is horrified. One female pharaoh was already an aberration. 2 would be a dynasty of women, a complete overturning of natural order. The whispers are vicious. You're destroying Egypt, defying the gods, creating chaos that will end the world. You ignore them. You've been ignoring them for 16 years. But Neferure herself is uncertain. She sees what the position has cost you, the constant vigilance, the political battles, the inability to trust anyone completely. She sees you wearing yourself down to maintain power. Do you ever regret it? She asks during a private lesson. Taking the throne? You consider the question honestly. Regret suggests I had a choice. I didn't. If I hadn't taken power, Egypt would have fallen into chaos. Weak pharaohs mean civil war, foreign invasion, collapse. I did what was necessary. But was it worth it? You look at her, your daughter, 15 and already old enough to understand the weight of crowns. I don't know yet. Ask me when I'm dead and you can see what survives. She doesn't look comforted. You don't blame her. You've given her an impossible inheritance, power that requires constant fighting to keep, and a precedent so fragile that one mistake could shatter it forever. But what choice do you have? Let it all revert to male rule after you're gone. Let your entire reign become a historical footnote, an aberration, a cautionary tale. No. You'll fight until your last breath to make female rule permanent. You are 33 when the high priest of Amun finally dies. Hapusneb has clung to life for years beyond any reasonable expectation, but death comes for everyone eventually. This is your chance to secure control of the priesthood permanently. The succession should go to the second prophet, your appointed loyalist. But the third prophet, backed by a faction that's never fully accepted your rule, makes a play for the position. He has support from older priests who remember when pharaohs were always male. You can't allow a hostile high priest. The Temple of Amun controls too much wealth, too much influence, too much of the religious legitimacy that underpins your power. You intervene directly. You call a meeting of the senior priesthood and make your position clear. The second prophet will become high priest. Anyone who objects can resign their position, lose their temple estates, and retire to private life. The third prophet objects. He makes theological arguments about proper succession, divine will, ancient traditions. You let him speak. Then you respond with a simple question. Do you question the choice of Amun-Ra himself? It's a trap. If he says yes, he's denying divine will. If he says no, he's accepting your authority as Amun-Ra's chosen representative. He chooses wrong. The god's will is interpreted through proper procedure, not royal decree. You nod thoughtfully. I see. Then perhaps you should consult Amun-Ra directly in your retirement. You're relieved of all duties, effective immediately. Your estates revert to temple administration. You may take what you can carry and leave the precinct by sunset. The other priests watch in silence. You've just destroyed a senior religious official in less than a minute. The message is clear. Defy the pharaoh and lose everything. The second prophet becomes high priest without further objection. Your control of the Temple of Amun is now absolute. You've won. But you've also made enemies who will wait for their chance to strike back.
You're 34 when Neferure dies, your daughter, your chosen successor, your hope for continuing female rule. The official cause is fever. The unofficial speculation ranges from poisoning to divine punishment for your presumption in trying to establish a female dynasty. You don't care about the cause. She's dead, and with her dies your plan for succession. The funeral is elaborate, expensive, appropriate for a royal princess. You perform the rituals mechanically, empty inside. You've lost people before, your father, your husband, Senenmut. But this is different. Neferure was your future. Without her, everything you've built ends with you. Thutmose III will be sole pharaoh when you die. He'll rule as a man, restoring proper order. Your reign will become an anomaly, a strange interlude between legitimate male pharaohs. Every precedent you've established for female rule dies with Neferure. You go to Jeseru after the funeral and stand before the relief showing your divine birth. All that propaganda, all that mythology, all that careful construction of legitimacy. For what? So it can all be erased within a generation. For the first time in your reign, you feel genuinely defeated. You stay at the temple for 3 days, barely eating, barely sleeping, just staring at the carved scenes of your triumphs. Your guards worry you're having a breakdown. Your advisors whisper about the pharaoh's grief driving her mad. On the 4th day, you return to the palace. You put on the royal regalia. You sit on the throne. You receive petitions and make judgments. Because what else can you do? Surrender? Give up? Let it all collapse now instead of after your death? No. You'll rule until you die. Build until you can't build anymore. Fight until there's no fight left. If it all gets erased afterward, at least you'll have tried. Sometimes that's all anyone can do. You are 35 when you finalize your will and succession arrangements. With Neferure dead, you accept reality. Thutmose III will be sole pharaoh after your death. But you're not giving up without conditions. You call Thutmose to a private meeting. He's 20 now, fully adult, capable, and probably has been planning for this moment for years. You dismiss all servants, all guards, all advisors. Just the two of you. When I die, you say bluntly, you'll rule Egypt alone. He nods carefully, unsure where this is going. But if you erase me, if you deface my monuments, chisel out my name, try to pretend I never existed, I will curse you from the afterlife with such fury that every god in the Egyptian pantheon will make your reign a nightmare. He blinks, surprised by your directness. You lean forward. I have built temples, won battles, secured Egypt's borders, managed the economy through famine and prosperity. I have been a good pharaoh by any objective measure. If you erase me, you're not erasing an incompetent woman. You're erasing a successful ruler. The gods will notice. The kingdom will notice. History will notice. I have no intention, he begins. Don't lie to me.
I've seen your faction building. I've seen the officials who resent female rule. I know what they'll advise when I'm dead. I'm telling you, be better than that. Honor what I've accomplished, even if you disapprove of how I accomplished it. You hand him a sealed papyrus. My will. Read it after I'm dead. It lists everything I've done for Egypt and asks, not commands, asks that you preserve my legacy. He takes it. You can't tell if he'll honor your request. He's smart enough to lie convincingly. You were a good teacher, he says finally. Ruthless, manipulative, but effective. I learned a lot from watching you. Good, you say. Use those lessons to be a better pharaoh than I was. That's the best legacy I could hope for. You dismiss him. You've done what you can. The rest is up to history. You're 36 when Decisive is finally completed. 15 years of construction, thousands of workers, millions in today's currency. The most magnificent temple Egypt has ever seen. The dedication ceremony is elaborate. Priests from every major temple in Egypt attend. Foreign ambassadors come bearing gifts. The entire court participates. You walk through the finished complex for the first time as a complete work. 3 terraced levels, each more sacred than the last. Colonnaded walkways with painted columns showing your names and titles. Statues of you as Osiris lining the upper terrace. The chapel carved into the cliff face where offerings will be made to your deified self after death. The reliefs tell your story perfectly. Your divine conception, your coronation by the gods, your military victories, your trading expeditions, your building projects. Hundreds of square meters of carved and painted stone proclaiming your greatness. This will stand for 3,000 years. Long after everyone who questions your legitimacy is dust, this temple will be teaching your story to future generations. That night, alone in your quarters, you allow yourself a moment of triumph. You've done it. You've carved yourself into history so deeply that erasure would require destroying one of Egypt's greatest architectural achievements. But you're also exhausted beyond measure. The completion of Decisive feels like finishing a race. You don't know what comes next. You've spent 16 years building toward this. You're 36 years old. You've been pharaoh for almost 2 decades. You're sick, tired, and your chosen successor is dead. What do you do when you've accomplished everything you set out to do, and there's nothing left but waiting for death? You suppose you'll find out. You are 37 when the dreams start. Not regular dreams, visions, or nightmares, or messages from the gods, depending on how you interpret them. You're in the afterlife judgment hall. Osiris sits on his throne. Anubis prepares the scales. Your heart will be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, goddess of truth and justice. If your heart is heavy with sin, the demon Amit will devour it, and you'll cease to exist. The second death, final oblivion. In the dream, your heart is placed on the scales. But before the weighing can complete, Thutmose III appears and adds weights to your side. Your heart sinks. The balance tips towards sin. Amit opens her crocodile jaws. You wake up screaming. Your physicians say it's the fever causing delirium. Your priests say it's anxiety about proper burial. Your advisors carefully don't say what they think. You know what it is. Guilt. For all the people you've had killed, all the ruthless decisions, all the political manipulation. You did what was necessary to hold power, but necessity doesn't erase sin. The ancient texts are clear. In the afterlife, you must recite the negative confession. All the sins you did not commit. I have not killed, but you have. I have not caused pain, but you have. I have not made anyone cry, but you have. You're terrified that all your accomplishments won't matter if your heart fails the weighing.
What good is being the greatest female pharaoh in history if you spend eternity in oblivion? You commission additional funerary texts, more spells, better amulets. You make massive offerings to the gods. You endow temples with enough wealth to ensure priests will pray for your soul for generations. But you can't escape the fundamental question: have you lived a good life, or just a successful one? And are they the same thing? You are 38 when you can no longer hide the illness. You collapse during a public ceremony, just fall over, unconscious before you hit the ground. The court erupts in controlled chaos. Physicians rush forward. Priests begin praying. Officials immediately start positioning themselves for the succession crisis they know is coming. You wake up 3 days later. Thutmose III is sitting beside your bed. He's 23 now, fully capable of ruling alone. He doesn't need you anymore. How long? He asks. You know what he's asking. Weeks, maybe a month or two if the gods are merciful. He nods, no emotion visible. You taught him too well. Will you erase me? You ask. You need to know. He considers the question for a long time. Not erase, but I'll need to clarify. To make it clear that your reign was unusual, not precedent-setting. That female pharaohs are exception, not tradition. So you'll deface some monuments. Probably. The ones that claim you ruled alone. The ones that minimize me. The ones that look like you're establishing a dynasty of women. You close your eyes. It's not what you hoped for, but it's better than complete erasure. Some of your monuments will survive. Your name won't disappear entirely. The temple, you ask? Jezeru? Will stand. It's too magnificent to destroy. I'm ruthless, not stupid. You smile weakly. I taught you well. Yes, he agrees, you did. You drift back to sleep. When you wake again, he's gone. You're alone except for servants and physicians. This is how it ends, not in glory or triumph, but in a sick room, negotiating the terms of your own semi-erasure with a successor who learned everything from you. You'd laugh if you had the strength. You are 39 when you die. It's a spring morning. You've been unconscious for 2 days. Your breathing has become increasingly shallow. The High Priest of Amun, your appointed loyal supporter, performs the last rites. Your few remaining servants are gathered. Thutmose III is there, sitting in formal pharaonic position, watching you die with the expressionless face you taught him to maintain. Your life doesn't flash before your eyes. There's no profound revelation. There's just pain lessening, breathing stopping, and then nothing, or everything, depending on whether the priests were right about the afterlife. Your body is immediately taken to the embalmers. The 70-day process begins. Your organs are removed, preserved, placed in canopic jars. Your body is packed in natron salt to desiccate it. Wrappings will cover you, layer after layer, with protective amulets between each one. Your sarcophagus is brought from storage. The quartzite inner coffin you commissioned years ago. The nested outer coffins covered in gold. Your funerary mask. The tomb in the Valley of the Kings is prepared. Your Ushapti servant figures are placed in their chamber. Your furniture, jewelry, food, wine, everything you'll need in the afterlife. Thutmose III oversees it all personally. Whatever he plans for your monuments, he gives you a royal funeral appropriate to a great pharaoh. That much he honors. The funeral procession winds through Thebes. Professional mourners wail. Priests chant prayers. Your mummy is carried on a sledge to the valley, to your tomb, to your final resting place. The burial chamber doors close. Seals are applied. You're alone in the dark with your grave goods and your fears about the weighing of your heart. History moves on without you. You are dead, but Egypt continues. Thutmose III takes sole power and proves himself one of the greatest warrior pharaohs in Egyptian history. He launches 17 military campaigns. He extends Egypt's borders further than any pharaoh before or after. He's brilliant, ruthless, effective, and about 15 years into his sole reign, he begins the erasure. Not complete destruction, he's too smart for that, but systematically, methodically, he has your names chiseled out of monuments. He replaces your cartouches with those of his father, Thutmose II, or his grandfather, Thutmose I. He has your statues broken and buried. He walls up sections of Djeser that show you as sole ruler. His message is clear. You were co-regent, not sole pharaoh. Your reign was legitimate, but junior to his. The official record now shows Thutmose I, then Thutmose II, then Thutmose III, with you as a footnote, co-regent during Thutmose III's youth, not a pharaoh in your own right. It's not what you feared, total erasure, but it's not what you hoped either. Your accomplishments are attributed to your co-regent. Your monuments are corrected to show proper order. Djeser stands, but your name is chiseled off much of it. Your obelisks remain, but Thutmose builds walls around them to hide them. Your temple reliefs are selectively defaced. For 3,000 years, you'll be almost forgotten. Archaeologists will find fragments, a statue here, an inscription there, but they won't know what to make of you. A female pharaoh? Impossible. Probably a mistake in translation. Your fear in the afterlife judgment wasn't about divine punishment. It was about being forgotten. About everything you built being erased as if you never existed. And you were half right. 3,000 years pass. Egypt falls to Persians, Greeks, Romans. The ancient language is forgotten. The hieroglyphs become mysterious symbols no one can read. Your temples are buried in sand. Your name is lost. Then, in the 19th century, archaeologists begin excavating. They find Djeser half buried. They excavate carefully, documenting everything. They notice something odd. Cartouches have been chiseled out systematically. Statues show feminine features, but masculine regalia. The word pharaoh appears in feminine forms in some places. Someone important was here. Someone who was erased. They piece together fragments. A cartouche that wasn't fully removed. A statue buried before it could be destroyed. An inscription in a hidden location that escaped the defacement. Hatshepsut, a name, a female name, a pharaoh? It takes decades of research, but slowly your story emerges. The first archaeologists can't believe it. A female pharaoh? Impossible. It must be a mistake. Maybe Hatshepsut was a man with an unusual name. But the evidence accumulates. The feminine grammatical forms, the transition from female to male imagery, the systematic erasure, the deliberate historical editing. Finally, they accept it. You were real. You were pharaoh. For over 20 years, you ruled one of the most powerful kingdoms on earth. You built some of the greatest monuments in Egyptian history. You commanded armies, managed an empire, and left a legacy so powerful that it required systematic erasure to diminish. Your fear of being forgotten was justified, but your precaution, building so magnificently that even defaced monuments tell your story, was vindicated. You're not forgotten anymore. You're one of the most famous pharaohs in history. Books, documentaries, museum exhibits celebrate your achievements. You won eventually. It just took 3,000 years.
In the afterlife, if it exists, you stand before Osiris for the weighing of your heart. You've been preparing for this moment since you became aware of mortality. Anubis places your heart on the scales. The feather of Ma'at sits on the other side, impossibly light. You begin the negative confession. I have not killed. but you have. I have not stolen, but you confiscated estates. I have not caused pain, but you ordered executions, launched wars, made ruthless decisions. The scale tips. Your heart is heavy with the weight of ruling. But before Amit can devour you, Thoth, god of wisdom and judgment, speaks. This heart bears the weight not only of sin, but of responsibility. She ruled justly according to Ma'at's principles. She maintained order. She protected Egypt. She fed her people during famine. She built monuments to honor the gods. Osiris considers. Her methods were ruthless. All Pharaoh's methods are ruthless, Thoth responds. That is the burden of power. The question is whether she used that power for Egypt's benefit or her own glory. You want to argue, it was both, obviously, but the gods don't seem to want your input. Osiris finally speaks. The heart is heavy, but not corrupt. The weight is duty carried, not evil done. She may pass. Amit closes her jaws, disappointed. The demons who tear apart the unjust retreat. You're allowed into the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise, where you'll spend eternity in peace. As you walk toward the golden fields, you think about your life. You made terrible choices. You hurt people. You ordered deaths. You manipulated, deceived, and ruthlessly eliminated obstacles. But you also ruled well. You built monuments that would last millennia. You kept Egypt safe and prosperous. You expanded the empire and enriched the kingdom. Was it worth it? You still don't know. But the gods apparently think so. That will have to be enough. Back in the world of the living, your legacy continues to evolve. Museums display your artifacts. Scholars debate your reign. Your story inspires people, especially women, who see in you proof that female leadership is not a modern invention, but an ancient tradition. Writers tell your story, sometimes accurately, sometimes creatively. You become a character in novels, plays, films. Sometimes you're portrayed as a villain, a usurper who stole the throne from its rightful king. Sometimes as a hero, a capable ruler fighting against patriarchal restrictions. The truth, as always, is more complex. You were both and neither. You were a human being who grabbed power when opportunity presented itself and used that power with a mixture of brilliance and ruthlessness. Tourists visit Djeser by the thousands. They stand on the terraces you walked 4,000 years ago. They photograph the reliefs showing your divine birth, your trading expeditions, your building projects. They learn your name, your story, your accomplishments. School children around the world learn about you in history classes. Egypt had a female pharaoh, teachers say, and students look up surprised. Really? Why didn't they tell us that before? Your obelisks still stand at Karnak, though one has fallen. The electrum coating is long gone, but the red granite endures. The hieroglyphs are still readable. Your names and titles are clear on the sections Thutmose III didn't deface. You wanted to be remembered. You wanted your accomplishments carved so deeply into stone that they couldn't be erased. You succeeded. 4,000 years after your death, you're more famous than most pharaohs who ruled longer and conquered more territory. Because your story is unique. Not just a pharaoh, but a female pharaoh who refused to accept the limitations her era placed on women. That makes you eternal. If you could speak to those who study you now, what would you say? Maybe this. Being first is hard. Being female in a role designed for men is harder. Being erased for succeeding is hardest of all. But here's what they don't tell you about breaking barriers. The barrier fights back. Every accomplishment you achieve will be questioned. Every decision will be scrutinized differently than if you were male. Every failure will be magnified. Every success will be diminished or attributed to others. You'll work twice as hard for half the recognition. You'll have to be perfect where men can be merely competent. You'll wear masks and costumes and false beards, literal or metaphorical, to be taken seriously. And even when you succeed brilliantly, someone will try to erase you afterward. But, and this is important, they won't fully succeed. Because when you build your legacy strong enough, erasure becomes impossible. The gaps in the record become evidence of your importance. The defaced monuments raise questions that lead to rediscovery. Your story will survive. Not the way you planned, not on the timeline you hoped for, but it will survive. So yes, you were ruthless. You manipulated, deceived, eliminated obstacles. You wore a false beard and pretended to be something you weren't. But you also ruled well. You protected your people. You built magnificently. You expanded the kingdom and secured its borders. You did the work. And 4,000 years later, people know your name. That's victory. Delayed, complicated, imperfect, but victory nonetheless. You are Hatshepsut. You were Pharaoh. You ruled Egypt for over 20 years. You built monuments that stand 4 millennia later. You refused to be erased, and you weren't. Sleep well. And there you have it. The story of a pharaoh who conquered not just territory, but time itself. 4,000 years ago, she built so well that we still remember her today. As you drift off to sleep tonight, think about this. Empires fall, dynasties end, even pyramids crumble. But a well-told story, carved deep enough into stone and memory, can survive anything. Hatshepsut proved that, and somewhere in the Egyptian afterlife, if such exists, she's probably smiling about it. Sleep well, everyone. Thanks for following her journey with me. Hit that subscribe button if you want more forgotten history to fall asleep to. Good night.